Hi, I'm Michael Foster, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the sweetest victories. You see, in business, just like in family, the person you trust the most can be the one plotting your downfall. But they often forget to check what's really beneath their feet before they push you off the cliff. Let me take you back to where it all began. Foster Technologies wasn't always the $100 million company it is today. 15 years ago, it was just a struggling at consulting firm my father had built from scratch. My dad was brilliant with technology, but terrible with business. By 2010, we were 3 months away from bankruptcy, and my father's health was failing under the stress. I was 25, fresh out of business school, while my older brother James was 30 and already a familiar face in the local nightlife scene. Dad had always favored James, the charming firstborn who could talk his way out of anything. But charm doesn't pay the bills, and James's party lifestyle had already cost the company several major clients. I still remember that rainy Tuesday when I found Dad slumped over his desk, tears in his eyes, looking at our latest financial reports. "It's over, Michael," he whispered, his voice broken. "Everything I built, I'm going to lose it all." Something in me snapped that day. I couldn't watch my father's dream die, even if he always saw me as second best. While James was out spending company money at exclusive clubs, I started working 18-hour days. I learned every aspect of the business, met with every client, and reviewed every contract. Mom worried about me. "Michael, you need to rest," she'd say, bringing dinner to my office at midnight. "You can't save the company by yourself." But that's exactly what I did. The first year was brutal. I restructured our debt, cut unnecessary expenses, including James's entertainment budget, and personally visited every major client we'd lost. Many slammed their doors in my face, but I kept coming back. Persistence pays off. By the end of that year, we were breaking even. James found it hilarious. Look at little Mikey playing businessman. He'd mock whenever he bothered to show up at the office. "Dad's still going to put me in charge, you know. I'm the oldest." I ignored him and focused on work. Over the next 5 years, I transformed Foster Technologies from a simple IT consulting firm into a full-service digital transformation company. We developed proprietary software solutions, expanded into cloud services, and built a reputation for excellence in the industry. The company grew exponentially. From $2 million in revenue, we hit $10 million, then $150 million, and finally crossed the $100 million mark last year. Our staff grew from 20 to over 500, and we opened offices in 3 countries. Dad's health improved as the company flourished, but his favoritism didn't change. Every success was somehow attributed to James's leadership, even though he spent most of his time planning his next vacation. At family dinners, Dad would praise James's business acumen while I sat quietly, going through quarterly reports on my phone. I didn't care about the credit. I cared about the company, our employees, and the legacy we were building. Besides, I had my own plans. What nobody knew, not even my father, was that I'd been carefully documenting everything over the years. Every decision James sabotaged, every client he lost, every dollar he wasted. More importantly, I'd been quietly building relationships with our key clients, making myself indispensable to their operations. I also had another secret, one that would turn out to be crucial during the company's darkest days when we were nearly bankrupt. I'd used my own savings and taken out personal loans to keep us afloat. In exchange, I'd received shares, lots of shares. The paperwork was buried in mountains of corporate documentation, but I legally owned 40% of Foster Technologies, or at least I thought that would be enough to protect me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Last month, everything changed. Dad announced his retirement, and everyone expected him to name me as his successor. After all, I'd been effectively running the company for years. Even James had been showing up to work more often, probably sensing the change was coming. The shareholders' meeting was set for Friday afternoon. All major stakeholders were present, including our board members and key investors. I prepared a comprehensive presentation about our growth strategy for the next 5 years. Dad stood up to make his announcement. I noticed James smirking in his seat, but I didn't think much of it at the time. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dad began, "as you know, I'm retiring as CEO of Foster Technologies. This company has been my life's work, and choosing my successor was not an easy decision." He paused, looking around the room. "But there's only one person who truly embodies the leadership qualities needed to take Foster Technologies to the next level. Someone who understands our family values and has the vision to lead us into the future." I sat straighter in my chair, ready to accept the responsibility I'd been preparing for all these years. "My son, James Foster, will be taking over as CEO, effective immediately." The room went silent. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. But Dad wasn't finished. "Furthermore, James has brought to my attention some concerning irregularities in our recent operations. It seems that certain individuals have been making unauthorized decisions and potentially compromising our company's integrity." James stood up, holding a folder. "I'm afraid my brother Michael has been operating outside his authority, making promises to clients we can't keep, and potentially engaging in unethical practices." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Every accusation was a twisted version of the truth. The very decisions that had saved and grown the company were being presented as reckless and unauthorized. "Therefore," Dad continued, "as my final act as CEO, I'm terminating Michael's employment with Foster Technologies, effective immediately." The security guards were already approaching my chair. James's voice dripped with fake sympathy. "I'm sorry it had to end this way, little brother. But hey, maybe now you can get a life outside the office." The room erupted in whispers as I was escorted out, my key card deactivated, and my access revoked. I could see the pity in some faces, the scorn in others, but they had no idea what was coming. Because while James was plotting my downfall, he'd forgotten 3 crucial things. First, those unauthorized decisions were all properly documented and approved. Second, my 40% ownership stake wasn't as buried as they thought. And third, well, let's just say that when you spend 10 years building a company's technology infrastructure, you learn where all the bodies are buried. Sometimes literally. As I walked to my car that evening, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message to an old friend at the SEC. Then I went home and waited. Monday morning was going to be very, very interesting. Monday morning arrived with a thunderstorm, fitting weather for what was about to unfold. I sat in my home office, watching the clock tick towards 9:00 a.m., when James would be stepping into his new CEO office for the first time. The weekend had been interesting. Mom had called 17 times, leaving tearful voicemails about family unity. Dad hadn't called at all. James had been too busy celebrating at his favorite clubs. The photos were all over social media, including some questionable ones with a company credit card clearly visible on the table. I smiled, remembering how James always thought technology was beneath him. "That's geek stuff," he'd say, refusing to learn even basic cybersecurity protocols. Well, that arrogance was about to cost him dearly. At exactly 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, my loyal executive assistant, who James hadn't bothered to fire, probably because he thought she just brought coffee. "It's starting," her message read. I opened my laptop and connected to Foster Technologies' internal security feed. Yes, I still had access. When you build a system from the ground up, you always leave yourself a back door. The camera in the CDO's office showed James walking in, coffee in hand, ready to begin his reign. He sat in a leather chair, my chair, and pressed the power button on his computer. That's when the show began. Instead of the Windows login screen, a video started playing. It was security footage from 3 years ago, showing James in this very office making a deal with our biggest competitor to sell them our client data. The audio was crystal clear. "Of course I can get you their information," James's voice rang out. "My idiot brother does all the work anyway. Just make sure the payment goes to my Cayman account." James frantically tried to turn off the monitor, but nothing worked. The video kept playing on every screen in his office. But that was just the beginning. His phone buzzed. The SEC had received an anonymous tip about insider trading, complete with documented evidence of James's illegal activities over the past decade. His private email started pinging with notifications. Somehow, all his confidential communications had been leaked to the board members. Down in the lobby, federal agents were walking through the front door. I watched through the security feed as James's face turned from confusion to panic. He tried calling Dad, but Dad's phone was busy, probably because he was getting his own set of revelations about his beloved firstborn's activities. At 9:30 a.m., Sarah walked into James's office. "Mr. Foster," she said calmly, "the board members are requesting an emergency meeting. Also, there are some federal agents here to see you." James started sweating. "Tell them I'm busy. Cancel everything and get up here to fix these damn computers." Sarah smiled politely. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. You see, the entire department just resigned." They sent a company-wide email explaining why. Something about loyalty to the person who actually built this company. "What? They can't do that. We have contracts." Actually, Sarah placed a folder on his desk. Their contracts were with a subsidiary company that holds all our intellectual property rights. A company that, as of this morning, is no longer affiliated with Foster Technologies. James's hands shook as he opened the folder. Inside was a simple document showing the ownership structure of Foster Innovation Labs, the subsidiary I'd quietly created years ago. The company that actually owned all our patents, software and client contracts, and I owned 100% of it. But the clients? James stammered. "They've already been informed of the change in management," I replied calmly. "Most have already signed new contracts directly with Foster Innovation Labs. It seems they prefer working with the person who actually handled their accounts all these years." The color drained from James's face as he finally understood. Every piece of technology that made Foster Technologies valuable, every client relationship that kept it profitable, every key employee who made it run, they were all loyal to me. He had stolen an empty shell. The office door opened again, and 2 FBI agents walked in, followed by Mr. Patterson, our chief legal counsel. "James Foster," one agent said, "we need to ask you some questions about certain financial transactions." "You can't do this," James shouted, looking wildly around the room. "I'm the CEO. I'm in charge here." Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Actually, about that," he pulled out another document. "The board just concluded an emergency meeting. Given the circumstances, they voted to remove you as CEO, effective immediately." "They can't do that. I own shares in Foster Technologies," James protested. Mr. Patterson corrected him. "A company that, as of 9 o'clock this morning, has no intellectual property, no major clients, and no core development team. I believe the stock price reflects that reality." James lunged for his computer, probably to check the stock ticker. But of course, his screen was still playing videos of his various illegal activities over the years. As James was escorted out of the building by federal agents, his designer suit wrinkled and his face ashen, I sent one final company-wide email from my remote access to all remaining Foster Technologies employees. You have a choice. Stay with a sinking ship or join us at Foster Innovation Labs, where innovation and integrity actually mean something. Your jobs are secure, your benefits will be better, and most importantly, your hard work will be respected. Within an hour, 90% of the staff had accepted the offer, but my revenge wasn't complete yet. There was still the matter of dear old Dad's retirement fund. The fallout was spectacular. Within 24 hours, Foster Technology stock had plummeted 70%. News of James's arrest made headlines in every major business publication. Tech CEO arrested on multiple fraud charges. Foster Technologies in freefall as scandal erupts. But I wasn't done yet. 3 days after James's arrest, I sat in my new office at Foster Innovation Labs headquarters, a modern building I secretly purchased 6 months ago. Sarah walked in with a familiar face. Dad's financial advisor, Mr. Goldman. He's been calling nonstop, Mr. Goldman said, looking uncomfortable. Ever since he realized that his retirement fund is worthless. I finished for him because he invested everything in Foster Technology stock. Dad had always bragged about having skin in the game, keeping his entire retirement portfolio in company shares. It was poor financial planning, but he'd never listened to advice about diversification. Now those shares were worth pennies on the dollar. Your father is desperate, Mr. Goldman continued. Mrs. Foster, your mother, she's worried they might lose the house. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about all the times Dad had dismissed my warnings about James's behavior, all the times he'd attributed my success to luck rather than hard work. Set up a meeting, I finally said. Tomorrow, 10:00 a.m. here. The next morning, my parents arrived at Foster Innovation Labs. Mom looked like she'd been crying, and Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. They sat across from me in the visitor chairs, the same model as the ones Dad used to make me sit in while he lectured me about real leadership. Son, Dad began, his voice shaking. I know I made mistakes, I interrupted quietly. You let James destroy evidence of his crimes. You helped him embezzle company funds. You were complicit in fraud that hurt our employees, our clients, and our shareholders, I said coldly. I didn't know, he tried to protest. You knew, I cut him off. You just didn't care because James was your golden boy, and I was just the backup plan. Mom started crying softly. I handed her a tissue, but that's not why you're here, I continued. You're here because you're broke. Because the company shares that were supposed to fund your retirement are worthless. Dad slumped in his chair. Michael, please. We're family. Family. I smiled without humor. Was I family when you let James take credit for my work? Was I family when you fired me in front of the entire company? I pulled out a folder. I learned that dramatic revelations are more effective with proper documentation. Here's what's going to happen, I said coldly. Foster Innovation Labs will buy back your shares in Foster Technologies at their original purchase price. Their eyes widened with hope, but I continued. There are conditions. First, you both sign a non-disclosure agreement about James's activities. Second, you retire quietly to that house in Florida you always talked about. Third, you stay out of my business completely. You do that for us, Dad whispered. Not for you, I corrected. For the scared 12-year-old boy who used to believe his father hung the moon. He deserved better than what you gave him. Dad started to speak, but I held up my hand. One more thing, I said. The money comes with a trustee. someone who will make sure you don't gamble it away on another one of James's schemes. Monthly allowance, investment restrictions, the whole package. You don't trust us, Dad said sadly. You taught me that lesson very well, I replied. They signed the papers and security escorted them out. Dad turned back one last time. I was wrong about you, son, he said. You're a better businessman than I ever was. Not Dad, I replied. I'm just better at remembering who my real enemies are. 5 years have passed since then. Foster Innovation Labs is now a billion-dollar company known for its cutting-edge technology and ethical business practices. James served 2 years in prison and now works as a bartender in Vegas. Dad and Mom live quietly in Florida, sending occasional postcards that I never answer. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at my old business school. The topic, the importance of integrity in family business, I accepted with a smile. After all, I have quite a story to tell. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so successful that they have to live with the knowledge that they bet on the wrong horse. And as for those who wonder how the quiet one, the careful one, the backup plan, pulled off such a complete victory. Well, let's just say that while the peacocks are busy showing off their feathers, the eagles are watching, waiting, and planning their next move. Because in business, just like in life, it's not about who starts at the top. It's about who's still standing when the dust settles.